video lesson presentation in Arts 6 for the period of third quarter. Last week you were given a task to read and study the introduction in Mixing the Tradition with Modern Printmaking and Technology, and Lesson 7, Step by Step, Silkscreen Printing. Before we discuss our new topic, prior to your new assignment, let us first recall and check your answers in your assignment. Let us read again the introduction titled Mixing the Traditional with Modern Printmaking and Technology. Introduction. Digital technology has indeed made its way into practically every facet of human life. From food production and medicine to business, communication, and manufacturing, and even to art and entertainment. Incorporating digital technology into street art was also taken up. In this unit, you will understand and appreciate how digital technology has made possible a faster process for printing of designs, and has made this technique more accessible to many, as seen on t-shirts and poster designs. It will also touch on the basics of photography, and how this has evolved in the age of digital technology. Now, let us answer the guide questions. First, you were tasked to list down at least 5 applications of digital technology. Here are the list of the only acceptable answers: food production, medicine, business, communication, manufacturing, art, entertainment. Next, let us answer this question. What are the 2 digital art processes that are mentioned in the introduction? That will be the scope in our third quarter arts, using the R plus A. The answer could be the 2 digital art processes that are mentioned in the introduction. That will be the scope in third quarter arts are printmaking and photography. Next, let us read lesson 7 titled Step by Step, Silkscreen Printing. Printmaking is one of the oldest art forms, where an image is transferred from one surface to another. There are various methods of printmaking. One of these is silkscreen printing. The silkscreen printing technique makes use of a woven mesh to support an ink blocking stencil to acquire a desired image. The process involves using a stencil to apply ink onto another material, usually fabric, like t-shirts, pouches, caps, or any material that can keep the image onto its surface. Silkscreen printing is a viable business venture, especially if you can come up with unique designs. As in most artworks, you just need to be creative and make sure to use the elements and principles of art as you would in traditional art. To answer the guide question is easy. The answer can be found barely in the texts that you have read. You are asked to simply define or give the objective meaning of the term silkscreen printing. Here is the objective definition of silkscreen printing. The silkscreen printing technique makes use of a woven mesh to support an ink blocking stencil to acquire a desired image. The process involves using a stencil to apply ink onto another material, usually fabric, like t-shirts, pouches, caps, or any material that can keep the image onto its surface. Now we are done answering your assignment. Let us now discuss about the new topic and new assignment. In arts,
Ang Pilipinas, ginbugayan sang madamo nga mga kapuluan. nga nagapadayaw sang nagkalain-lain nga mga tawo nga may dungganon nga ginhalinan sa mga bantayog nga taliambong kag artisano kundiin ang mga ordinaryo nga mga butang mahimo nga obra maestra nga may dugang nga tema base sa kultura. Magtuon sa mga simple nga tradisyonal nga tema nga ginagamit sa pagpatik sa lawas, sa mga tela, basket, banig, kag borda. Ang mga pinakasimple nga korte sang sulundan may ara nga tukma nga kahulugan nga silbi inspirasyon para mapakita ang isa ka kinaiya sang tawo. Akon ipakita paano ko ginpili ang kombinasyon sang nagkalain-lain nga tema nga tradisyonal para manginhulagway sang akon kaugalingon. Huna-hunaa kag batyaga ang mga sulundan kag kulor nga nagahaom sa imo balatyagon kag pagkatawo. Ang mga disenyo sa bayo, patik sa lawas, mga alahas, gamit kag porma sang balay kag building, pirmi nga may relasyon sa espiritual nga simbolo kag pinili nga espiritu sang puon o kun Dios. Ang lingling-o nagakahulugan sing kahamungaya, maayong lawas, manggad, pagkamabungahon, ginhalinan, kabaskog, pagkailoy, kag ang dalan sang sagrado nga pagbulong didto sa ifugaw, buntok, kag kalinga. Ang pagbatok sa kalinga sa norte sang Pilipinas. Nagagamit sang nilawhat, pako or simbolo sang pagkamabinungahon, kakusog, maayong lawas. Gayamanan, talimbabaga para sa pag-amlig, kaluwasan, mataas nga kabuhi, proteksyon. Tinatalaaw, simbolo sang gabi kag adlaw. Hanunuo mangyan sa Mindoro may ara nga pinasahi nga disenyo. Pakudos, ang kahoy sang kabuhi nga nagasipak sa apat ka direksyon. Ang panubok o kondisenyo sa pagborda sa Panay Bukidnon sa Kabisayaan may pinasahi nga tema. Bulak kalabog. Ilahas ang bulak sa lasang, nagapakita sang koneksyon sa palibot. Ang tunok nagahatag kusog kag kabuhi. Tugi-tugi. Tiko-tiko nga linya, nga ginbugna halin sa korti sang bukid. Sikag-sikag. Tunok sang isda. Espeho. Dalan sang kabuhi. Pako-pako. Ilahas nga pako. Nagasanga sa wala kag sa tuo. Damgo sang kabuhi. Ang mga bulong sa mga tumandok nga ati nagagamit sang madamo nga kulor nga simbolo halin sa ilahas nga tanom. Ang mga Miranao sa Mindanao, parte sa sur sa Pilipinas, may ara nga pinasahi nga tema. Pako rabong, ukir, ukon ukil, halin sa linya kag porma sang mga tanom. Ang mga tema, disenyo, sulundan kag simbolo nga ginagamit sa mga tela, butang, patik sa lawas, kag panimalay, nga lain-lain sa kada tribo, maski daw pareho lang sa mga mata sang wala kabalo.
Get your notebook and copy the following for your assignment. This must be completed and submitted on or before your next asynchronous online class. In a short bond paper, draw the following motifs and designs. You may pause the video to copy the instruction. Next thing you are going to do is watch a video. The guide questions that you must answer will be presented at the end of the video. If you are ready, carry on to the next slide.
Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to screen print your own t-shirt and show you the entire screen printing process from beginning to end. So the first thing you'll need is a screen. A lot of people will tell you you can build one, you probably could, but I highly encourage you guys just to purchase one. They're anywhere between $20 to $25 and you can either buy the wooden frame ones or the aluminum. Now when you buy these screens, they'll usually have numbers imprinted on them. In the beginning, stick with 110 or 156. They're very safe. There are mesh counts that go to 200, 230, 300. But those are for more detailed artwork later on, but in the beginning stick with 110 or 156. Next, you will be degreasing your screen. In other words, cleaning it. You just want to remove any dust particles or dirt particles off the screen so that you're working with a clean screen. I have a washout booth, but you don't need one. I started off in my shower tub and then I moved out to my patio in a bucket, but you can use your standard garden hose, scrub brush, or a sponge. Just make sure that brush is only designated to degrease the screen and not for anything else. First, you're just gonna wet the screen, spray some of the degreaser on, then you're gonna scrub down the screen and the backside. Then you're gonna rinse out the entire screen. Make sure you hit the edges of the frame, the front and the backside as well. Afterwards, you're gonna dry your screen. You can either just let it air dry or you can put a fan on and let it dry a little quicker. Now, once the screen is dry, we're gonna add emulsion on. In order to apply emulsion onto the screen, you will need a scoop coater. When it comes to the emulsion brand, there are a ton of different types of emulsions and a lot of different brands of emulsion. The one that I like to use is this brand right over here. Over the years of trying different types of emulsion, I found that this one to be the easiest to use, most forgivable, and easiest to clean as well. Emulsion is light sensitive, so you want to keep it out of light as much as possible. Now, when people first get started, they think that they need to be in a light safe environment with a yellow bulb, zero UV light, and just complete darkness. But being exposed to a little bit of like your room light or your garage light is completely fine as long as it's not out in direct sunlight. Like the brand that I use is a lot more forgiving than others. I don't have a dark room. I coat all my screens in the light and I've had zero problems over the years. Now, when you pour the emulsion into the scoop coater, you make sure that you don't fill up more than half the amount you can fill into the scoop coater. First, you're gonna coat the outside of your screen. You're gonna tilt your screen 45-degree backwards, and then you're gonna use the thin side of the scoop coater and press it against the mesh and let the emulsion slowly drip until it makes contact with the screen. Once it makes contact, you're gonna still push against the screen with your scoop coater and pull it up till you reach the top. Then you're gonna tilt the entire screen with the scoop coater 45 degrees other way so that the emulsion is slowly going back into the scoop coater. So I'm gonna show you guys one more time. Screen tilted back, let the emulsion drop. Once it makes contact, you're gonna pull up, then let the emulsion drip back down and scrape it off right there. Ooh, that's nice and that's satisfying. Every time you pull up to, you should hear a very satisfying zip. Then you're gonna flip the screen around and do the print side or the back side of the screen. Tilt the screen 45, scoop coater against the screen. Once it makes contact, pull up and 45 degrees the other way till the emulsion gets back in, scrape, and done. And then you have a coated screen. Normally you would do a 1-to-1 ratio, so you would do one outside then one inside. In this case, I've done 2 on the outside and 1 on the inside for demonstration. That means that the stencil will be a little bit thicker because I added 3 coats in total. Next, you want the screen to dry, not standing sideways but facing downwards. I'm using 2 containers to prop up my screen so that there's airflow on the bottom and top. If you have more than one screen, I recommend you trying to coat as many screens as possible during that session of coating screens. Here in this video, I'm coating about 20 plus screens, and I like to do everything in one session, and that way I can store everything together at once. Also, make sure that when you're drying your screen, it's in a darker place. So the restroom is a great place, your closet can be another place, or someone's bedroom when no one is there. Now, the drying time really depends on where you live. If you live in a colder, more humid place, it'll take longer. If you live in a warmer, drier place, it'll dry a lot quicker. How you know if it's dried is just by touching both sides of the screen, and if it's completely dried and there's no emulsion stickiness, then you're good. Next, scrape off all emulsion you didn't use into your emulsion container to save as much emulsion as possible. Then you're going to rinse off your scoop coater. Make sure you do this right away and don't let it dry, because the moment it dries, it sticks and it stays there, and you don't want that to happen. So next is going to be the artwork. I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible because this itself can be a whole separate video, which I'll do later on in the future. But you'll need a special coated transparency paper, and you'll need a inkjet printer that can print black. For this demonstration, I'm going to go to shutterstock.com and choose a free royalty-free image. Stella and I, we love birds, and we also really love owls. So I'm going to look at some owl photos. Let's see, owls. And I really like this one. Cute owl cartoon. Yeah, let's go with this one. I love owls. I love what looks like coffee. It's download for free, so we're gonna go ahead and download that. Now, if you don't have a inkjet printer or transparency paper, you can go to a local print shop and ask them to print your design file onto a transparency paper. Just make sure when you look at your transparency image on a light source that the black is opaque and that a lot of light is not going through. If you notice that it's really transparent, then print 2 transparency and then overlap them together so that you have a more opaque black transparency. If you don't have an inkjet printer, you can also just get a Sharpie and either write or draw out your design on it, and the Sharpie will be enough to block out the light. Next, you're going to attach your transparency to your coated screen. I'm going to add 2 pieces of tape onto the transparency facing upwards, so that way when I bring the screen down, the tape sticks onto the screen. Normally a design sits about 3 to 4 fingers from where the collar is, and that's where I like to set it from the top of the palette. I recommend getting a T-squared ruler so that you can make sure that your image is properly aligned and straight. Next, you're going to expose your screen. 3 ways you can do it. 1 is out in the sun, 2 is by having a light source on top that hits the top of your screen, and 3 is by facing your image downwards and having the light hit from the bottom. The one that I use is a light box with a timer installed into it. Now, when you put your screen on top of the light box, there might be some gap between the glass and the screen. So in order to make sure that it's making complete contact, you want to put some sort of flat weight on top. In this case, I'm going to be using my high school yearbook and just a gallon bucket of water just to add some extra weight. I'm gonna let the screen expose. In my case, it takes about 30 to 40 seconds for it to expose. If you do it out in the sun, it might take about 10 to 15 minutes. If you do it with a light source on top, it could take up to 8 to 10 minutes. Once it's done, you're gonna bring it over to your washout booth or your patio or your shower, wherever you do your washouts. Now, the moment you rinse it, you will notice your design being visible just a little bit. That's because you're breaking down the unexposed emulsion and you're gonna completely wash it out. You're gonna rinse your screen down with your garden hose until all the emulsion is washed out. Later on, if you get more serious, you can also use something called a pressure washer, which is very handy to have around, but it's not mandatory if you're just starting off, but really consider one later on. After you're done rinsing, just hold your screen up to a light source to make sure that you've washed out all the emulsion on your design, because if you don't, it's going to cause more headaches when it comes to print production. Then let your screen dry. You can also use a fan to speed up the drying process. Next, you're going to align the screen to the center of the palette until you're satisfied Once you are, lock it in. Next is the ink. You can choose any ink color that you want and put it on the screen and print it. For this demonstration, I'm going to keep it simple and just use black ink. There's two types of ink. There's water-based and there's plastisol ink. For this video, I'm going to focus just on plastisol. Plastisol ink is a lot easier to use, it's very friendly to use, but it requires a very specific drying method. The ink has to reach anywhere between 275 to 350 degrees for 20 to 30 seconds. It all depends on the ink brand, so whichever brand you use, read the instructions so that you are aware of the drying temperature. You're gonna need a spatula or a spoon to get some of the ink, and then you're gonna lay it down onto the screen. If you just load a shirt, the shirt's gonna have a lot of room to move, so in order for the shirt to stick onto the palette, you need to use some sort of adhesive. You can either use a spray adhesive meant for screen printing, don't get the ones at your craft store because those are very heavy, or liquid adhesive, or also known as liquid glue. For this demonstration, I'll use spray adhesive, but I personally like using liquid glue and I prefer to stick only with that. But if I'm printing like 1 to 10 shirts, I'll just use a spray adhesive because it's a lot quicker and it saves a lot more time. Now, once I load the shirt in, I'm going to pull it back until the collar reaches the edge of the palette. And that's because I set the design 3 to 4 fingers down from the top of the palette. So I'm gonna load it and slowly pull back until the collar meets the edge of the palette. That way the print is guaranteed to be printed 3 to 4 fingers down below from the collar. Squeegees. A squeegee is what you'll use to push the ink through the screen onto the shirt. There are wooden squeegees and there are aluminum squeegees. If you're just starting off, stick with the wooden ones. But I love the aluminum squeegees. They are a little bit more expensive, but they're easier to clean, they don't warp, they don't stain, they don't hurt your wrist as much, and they're just a lot cleaner and easier to use. There are two ways to print. There is the push method and there is the pull method. I'm going to show you the push method because it's a lot easier for most beginner printers and it has a lot less stress on your body. When you're just starting off, make sure that the squeegee is angled at a 45-degree angle. Make sure that you're not pushing too straight upwards or you're gonna have a lot of friction. Make sure it's not pushing too sideways or you're going to be depositing a lot more ink. First, you're going to lift up the screen just a little bit and then you're going to drag the ink from the bottom to the top of the screen. This is also known as flooding. What you're trying to do is you're trying to fill in all the gap in the stencil with ink so that you can push it through. When you flood the screen, you should still be able to see your image. If you cannot, that means that you're not flooding hard enough. Then at a 45-degree angle, you are going to push the squeegee, driving the ink through the screen, and you should hear a nice zip. And there you have it, a successful first print. Next, you're gonna pull the shirt out, put it on top, and then you're gonna dry the ink. What I'm using is called a flash dryer. A flash dryer is just a giant heater that heats up to about 700 degrees. It heats the shirt up to about 350 to 375 degrees so that it melts the ink and fuses the ink so that it can dry. A temperature gun is a very important tool in the shop, so make sure you have one so you can keep monitor of how hot things get. Another way to test if the ink is dried or not is called the stretch test. Once the shirt has been cooled down, you can try pulling on the ink, and if the ink isn't breaking apart or it's not flaking, that is a very good sign of it being fused and bonded. If it starts cracking, that means that the ink is not fully dried. Now, the second method of drying your shirt is through a heat gun. Now, heat gun is much more affordable than a flash dryer, but it also takes a lot longer to dry. I like to have the heat gun where I can control the temperature on the back, and then you're gonna hover around the entire design back and forth with the heat gun. If you focus on one area with the heat gun too long, you're gonna end up burning the shirts. So it's best to have a temperature gun on one hand and keep track of where you're drying to make sure that it's being fully cured. And there you have it, your first shirt is officially printed and done. Now, a couple of things I want to note: you do not need all the equipments that I've shown in this video. There are so many ways to start screen printing on a budget, but I think the most important question you need to ask yourself is why you want to screen print. Once you understand your why, the what and the how, you'll able to persevere through, you'll be okay learning, you'll take all the hits. But if you don't know why you're getting started, then the investments that you make will feel like a waste of money and a waste of time. That is why I'm putting a screen printing guide for beginners. I'm currently working on it. I'm more than halfway done and expect it to be done by next month. If that's something that you guys are interested in, I'll leave the link down below for you guys to check it out. My goal is to help those that want to get started have a bigger picture of what they're getting themselves into before they jump in. You'll find so many people go into this business, in this industry, and then buy all these equipment, invest, and then quit after like a month or 2 months later because they realize that the amount of work that goes in, or it's not what they expected, not enough business or revenue flowing through. And I don't want people to waste money like that. When I first got started, I had a very specific reason why I was starting, which is why I'm still doing it till today. So I'm really excited to finish that up and share that with you guys. Lastly, if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below, or if you guys would like me to cover a specific topic, let me know and I will definitely consider that. But if you would like to see more screen printing content like this, give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and I will see you guys in the next video over. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Hope this was a ton of value to you guys, and I'll see you guys. Good night, good morning, adios.
Here are the questions that you must answer. The last slide is your assignment number 3. Just pause the video and copy all the assignments.